Hi everyone, it's Plastic EP. Welcome to the Plastic EP album show. I've got a fantastic panel today. Ken Michaels, got Daniel Colson, and I got Jim Ryan. We might have somebody dropping in as well. How are you today, Ken?
I'm doing great. It's great to be back here. It's been a while.
That's great. How are you, Daniel?
Very good. It's like I saw you yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. And how are you, Jim?
I'm pretty good, thank you.
That's it. That's all we want to hear. Now, just got to say, I love Red Rose Speedway. One of my favourite albums, and I like this, what they did with me here to help promote the show. But let's move on to the real album. And are we all feeling groovy?
Why, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Hey, bananas, we think you're groovy. Hey, bananas, we watch a movie. Yeah. Drive your June buggies everywhere, just going crazy without a care. Hey, bananas, we think you're groovy.
Right, straight into it today. Now, tell us what you think of the album, Ken, overall.
I like it a lot. I now consider it a great album. For most of my adulthood, I considered it very good to great. Usually with a lot of McCartney albums, I like every song except one or two. That's a very common thing. And with Red Rose Speedway, the only song I ever had a problem with was Single Pigeon, which is still a pleasant song for me. I don't dislike it in any way, but I just thought it wasn't that strong a song. A lot of the songs that people tend to knock, like the instrumental Loop, I absolutely adore. I love the very experimental nature of that song and the experimental side of Paul. But overall, all the other songs I love a lot. And Little Lamb Dragonfly is one of my all-time favorite McCartney songs. The medley on side 2 is absolutely brilliant. Paul has this incredible knack for writing medleys or songs that are either half finished or songs that somehow he can string together with other songs in a way where it flows so naturally, and seamless. That it's almost like the songs were written all together at once. He's got that incredible gift. So overall, I like all the songs. And when you like every song on an album, or every song except one, to me that's very good to great. In my estimation.
Totally agree. Daniel, overall, the album, how do you like it?
I actually listened to it again ahead of this, and I have to say, I need to listen to it again a little more. I much like Ken, I kind of thought, well, it's an okay album. It's kind of an in-between record between the early Wings and obviously what he did after this. But no, it's a really good, solid record. It kind of bridges. It fleshes out some more of the ideas that he had on McCartney and Wildlife into more of a full band situation. There's obviously some tracks are a little more full band or with orchestra than others. But and again, side 2, fascinating. I dare say and correct me if I'm wrong, this may be the most kind of spaced out and experimental Wings ever got. So it's really a really good record. Really.
Great. Jim, what do you think of the album overall?
Well, when we mentioned you were running to do this, I'd realized it had been years since I'd actually sat down and listened to the whole album. And doing that a couple of times, I kind of remembered why, because it really didn't stick with me the first time. But listening to it now, you start to hear that the characterization of Paul during this period where we're still trying to find himself, there's definitely a lot of effort to, we see Paul post-Beatles, but he isn't exactly the Paul McCartney we all came to know years later. And it's a lot of rough drafts and initial movements that are coming out here that are worth looking at.
That's great. Let's get straight into the album with the first track, right? And I've got to say, Big Barn Red, Bed, that is my favourite track. I don't know why, but the more I listen to the album, this song has just stood out and taken over the whole album for me. I just love it. And I think basically it's that intro that makes it. Now, before we just continue, I've just got someone else on. We've got Hudson Rainey. You're coming in, Hudson.
Hey, Hudson.
Hey,
There.
Hello.
how you doing, Hudson?
I'm
All right, now that you've joined us, as I said, we're doing the first track, right, which is Big Bun Bed. What do you think of that track, Ken?
Oh,
Oh, I love it. I think it's a great album opener. It's catchy as hell. It's one of those songs that could have been a single, I felt. Um, one of the problems I think in the careers of the solo Beatles, and especially with McCartney, is that he was so prolific. And there are albums where he didn't release enough singles, or in the case of the first McCartney album, no singles or one single. But he already had Live and Let Die in his pocket, ready to go out by the time that Red Rose Speedway was done. So he only had My Love as a single. And he could have released Big Barn Bed as a single as well. So I do think it's a really catchy album opener, a good fun track. I love everything about it. I especially love the fills that Denny Sywell does on the drums on it. He really knows how to accent and do different types of fills to make the song interesting.
Totally agree. What do you think, John?
John?
Jim?
What do you think?
Oh, I thought there was somebody else who moved into the room.
No, sorry.
There's tons of people here. You can't keep track of them all.
Well, I have to agree. It is a great opening song. It doesn't get a lot of attention. It's not one of his more stellar bits, but you can see that he's definitely working on moving towards that. I mean, it's yet another part of his whole cycle of "I'm on a farm, y'all." That definitely is. It definitely pulls it along at that point. So.
Great. Daniel?
Really, for me, this is the one song that feels like it could have also worked on Wildlife. And, really, McCartney got into this thing around McCartney on where it was like, I think he was kind of playing with the song structure. I mean, Big Barn Bed is really just, it's a hook and a chorus. That's really what it all is. But I think he was also enjoying jamming. I think he was enjoying jamming with a band. And this you really find this in that period between Wildlife and Red Rose.
Fantastic. Mr. Podcast, Hudson Rainey.
I think it's a great opening song. One of my critiques of the double album, which I think is a little bit superior because, I mean, same with Off the Ground and this album, is that there were so many B-sides that are just as good as what's on the album or even better. And it didn't open that album. I think it opened with Night Out, and it was just so weird. Like, this is where I think that it just shines, and it's a pure McCartney track, and it could have been a single. I mean, if you look at the solo Beatle albums in 1973, you had 3 albums that only had one single. Mind Games, which I know, Ken, you and I both adore. Living in the Material World, which I believe it's your favorite album of all time. And this album only had one single, which is ridiculous. I mean, this should have been the second single.
Fantastic. What I could say. Got a text from Charles Rosenay. Red Rosenay Speedway. We love you, Charles. He's got a big event on. Fab 4 Festival event in July. It's on the net. If you want to come on, Charles, you're welcome. Coming from wherever you are, and tell us a little bit about it. I'd like to know more. I'm sure everyone would too. Now let me go to the next single, right? My Love. I mean, what do you say? I mean, to me, My Love is like, it blows my mind. It's that great a song and that great a single. Ken?
Oh, I agree. I think it's a great love song, and it's got an amazing melody to it, and Paul's vocals are outstanding. And we all know that he praised Henry McCullough for his lead guitar solo to the point where he didn't want him to play it any other way when it was a live performance, which caused problems with the band. But I love it. I'm glad that it was the huge hit that it was. In the U.S., it was #1 for 4 weeks. But also, as someone who really loves love songs, Paul's done so many great ones in his solo career. And I wouldn't put My Love at the top of the list, but I certainly think that it was worthy of being a #1 single. and it's a perfect recording. There's an odd thing about Paul. He often doesn't know what his best material is, and you could say that that's always subjective. But Pete Bennett, who did a lot of promotion work for Apple, told Paul My Love should be a single, and Paul didn't want it out as a single. He didn't think it would be a hit, and how wrong he proved to be. But yeah, so I do think very highly of the song. It's still a solid ballad. Love everything about it.
Can I ask you what you rate as his number one love song? Is it Silly Love Songs? I'm just saying at a guess.
No, my favorite of all of his love songs would be Only Love Remains, which is on his Press to Play album. I think everything about that song is perfect. The lyrics are absolutely amazing. His vocals, especially in the bridge of the song, is fantastic. The whole production of the song is amazing. And it was coming at a time when gradually radio stations were playing less and less of Paul because, Top 40 only caters to a young audience. And once artists get older and older, their airplay diminishes over time, even with someone as iconic as Paul McCartney. But his singles were also getting airplay on adult contemporary stations, and Only Love Remains was a top 10 on that chart, but not on the Hot 100, which I think a lot of people would say is what matters the most. But it's still an incredible song overall. It's stellar in every way.
Well, I liked his Stevie special, James Paul McCartney. That was a ripper. The UK one, and he does My Love, and all the songs fantastic. Jim, what do you think of the song, My Love?
It definitely earned its place as an iconic song of Paul's, and certainly one of the better songs of his post-career, as well as one of the better love songs that have ever been done. Supposedly, it got a lot of play in various different institutions. A lot of weddings in the 70s and 80s ended up having that on their playlists. And there's a good reason for it. It's a very solid piece, very heartfelt, and it touches all the right emotional notes as he discusses why he loves her.
Totally agree. Daniel?
I mean, that's, I mean, again, not that I was around for that back then, or was very young age, but in early '73, McCartney started to get eclipsed by, John and George, and, even Ringo was about to, he's less than a year away from his record out. I think people started to wonder if Paul could do that again after Wildlife. Could he have a hit could he be top of the charts again? And he did it. In some ways, My Love is the most, I don't want to say complete on Red Rose Speedway, but it's definitely the most thought about between the strings, the orchestration, the song structure. But it is amazing, Ken, that for a song that feels like that, this is it, this is the hit, this is the monster, that Paul was like, no, I don't know, maybe not. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we're not him. We don't have his mind. But
exactly. Hudson, Mr. Podcast, come on. My Love, what do you think?
I think this is a song that I've always... This is a top 10 McCartney solo song for me. That I know Professor Kozin would disagree, but I've always loved the guitar solo. I know that's kind of become really controversial to like that now. Ever since I got Wings Greatest as a 10-year-old, this was the song that was from that album that was on here. And I really love that story that Denny Sewell tells during interviews of him and Henry and Steve Hawley at a Beatle Fest, and they were all playing this, and they were all like crying with the guitar solo, which has always just touched me. And Denny's drumming is just perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Next track, Get on the Right Thing. I like it. It's like, it's the groove of the time.
Yeah.
You know what? Get on the right thing. You know what I mean? That comes out from nowhere. I love it. Ken?
Oh, it's such a funky track. I love the fact that, I love when Paul does that, I don't know if you want to call it honky-tonk feel on the piano, but it's interesting that song and Little Lamb Dragonfly are actually from the Ram sessions, left over. And yet he felt that it should be brought back for Red Rose Speedway. Everything about it, Paul's vocals are great. What he's playing on the piano is great. The lead guitar work on there is fantastic. It's really, really catchy. It's one of those great piano-oriented songs from Paul. So yeah, I think it's really strong. Can I add something to what Daniel said just before? Because very
Sure.
often there's this narrative that we hear about Paul didn't find himself until Band on the Run, and that maybe his record sales weren't that good until then. Well, the very first McCartney album hit #1 in the US, and you can't get any better than #1. And Ram went to #2, and Wildlife went to #10. I think by anybody else's standards,
Yeah.
they'd be quite happy with that kind of success. But when you're a Beatle and you have a #10 album, that's probably looked at as being a failure. But I don't. I think that as far as Paul finding himself and that kind of thing, with all the praise being heaped on Ram right now, as though it's such a masterpiece and Paul put so much effort into all the songs and everything. Why don't you say that about Ram instead of waiting till Band on the Run and like it's this gradual climb? It's kind of like he's somewhat, I don't want to say erratic with his career. I think the first McCartney album, he was just experimenting, doing everything at home in the very beginning, and that's what came out of it. A lot of instrumentals. Everything on those recordings was what he heard in his head because he played all the instruments. It's a totally different vibe from Ram. And then Wildlife, he took a complete different turn from Ram and did this really raw album, not polished at all.
Yeah.
What a way to start a band off, And then I could see, more effort put behind the songs on Red Rose Speedway. I can see it in that regard. But they're just different approaches in the albums. But I think that he wanted Wings to be successful. So he was conscious of that as he was going along from Wildlife on. But still, he had a lot of commercial success prior to Red Rose Speedway. It's just there's a huge difference between commercial success and critical success. And the critics were really vicious to him in the early years of his solo career. So that's all I have to say about that.
It's a good point. And I was speaking more to the singles aspect than the albums, but you're right. All those albums were successful. I think Paul really enjoyed experimenting with different characters, much the way he was experimenting with different voices on Ram on. I think he's enjoying with different characters in some way. Like Wildlife is his kind of Dylan and the band getting it together in the country thing,
right?
And then Red Rose Speedway is like this kind of, okay, let's start here. Let's more jams, more groove, more band, and just kind of have it be all over the place. But yeah, you have to think about his records almost as characters, much the way that a lot of his songs, both vocally and lyrically, were characters.
Interesting. But also, Uncle Albert Admiral Halsey was a #1 hit.
True.
Another Day was a #5 hit. It's not like he didn't have hits before My Love. So,
well, the singles market is always really funky in America. It's like if you don't have a #1 within a year, people wonder if if your best work's in the past, which is a shame. And I've always felt that McCartney his work got compared more to the Beatles records more than even any of the other Beatles. It's like we allow John's records to be John's records, George's records to be George's records. But it's like Paul is like, well, he's up against that former band. It's almost a little unfair.
There's a higher standard set for Paul. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
Anyway, Jim, what do you think of the song? Get on the Right Thing.
It's actually a very nice piece. In many ways, the way My Love was talking about somebody who's feeling his love very deeply, Get on the Right Thing is somebody who's just discovering they're in love. In some ways, it might have actually been better if Get on the Right Thing had actually come before My Love in terms of the play order on the records. But it's actually an underappreciated little piece as well.
Thank you, Daniel.
It's a groove, it's and I'm glad to know that came from the Ram sessions, because there definitely is a bit of a vibe, to that song. But I think Paul was enjoying having a groove, as it were.
That's a groove right there. Hudson, Mr. Podcast, tell us.
I've always loved Get on the Right Thing. It's not a top 5 song on here, but I think it's just brilliant. I mean, the honky tonk honkish piano, as Ken said. I mean, it's catchy. It's just this is what I want from Paul during his solo career. It's got that early. There's something special about this Wings lineup. I don't know what it is. It, for me, it's the first lineup and the last lineup. There's just something really special about it. They've each got their own individual sound, and it just is like it's like eating a gooey cookie.
Great. Now, one more kiss. I didn't mean to hurt you, little girl. I just love it. What about you, Ken?
Oh, I love it too. It's just a very simple melody, but very affecting, and it's something that could have fit to me on Ram. It's got that heart of the country type feel. That down home on the farm kind of thing. It's a very simple song, but yet it stays in your head like most of McCartney's melodies do, and that's arguably his greatest gift. His songs stick with you after a few listens, and a very natural, flowing, melodic song. In a way that only Paul can do it.
Great. Jim, do you wander around the house singing One More Kiss?
No, actually, this one confused me. This song confused me because I always thought Ringo was the country and western artist. But I mean, it basically sounds like he'd made a stop at Nashville and decided to take in some of the atmosphere there. It feels a little strange, especially. I don't know if it would have felt any better had it been the 2-disc original concept for Red Rose Speedway or not. But it's an outlier. It's okay on its own merits. I just gotta wonder.
Fair enough, Daniel.
It is interesting that both George and Ringo and Paul have all kind of had a fascination with Nashville, and George and Ringo, both recorded there. Paul recorded there too. But it's like I feel like Ringo obviously went in the deepest, but Paul's had this fascination that he kind of toys with or works in from time to time through his records. And listening to this again, he goes, what if Paul made that Nashville record? That would be interesting. I don't think he would allow himself to do that now just because of what he's trying to do now, but I'd love to hear it.
Great. Mr. Podcast, what do you think of One More Kiss?
I love this song. It almost sounds like something that could have been on the Nashville Skyline Dylan album. And
yeah,
Dylan is like my thing that's not Beatles related. It's got that Nashville sound, and it's warm, it's fuzzy. It isn't my favorite McCartney solo song, no, but it's a great song, and I think this record's just consistently one of his best song per song, and is a top 5 McCartney album for me.
Great. Now we'll move on to the next one. Little Lamb Butterfly, Dragonfly. You like that one, Ken?
Oh, it's one of my absolute favorites of Paul's solo career. It's one of those songs. Like I said, Paul has this incredible gift for putting melodies, stringing songs together. Sometimes they're half-finished songs, sometimes they're finished, but somehow they all just seem to flow. And there's all these different sections in that song. It's very much like Uncle Albert Admiral Halsey in that regard, or Ben on the Run. There are certain songs throughout Paul's career, and even John did this too with Happiness is a Warm Gun. The song has all these different sections all strung together, and it flows like wine. It really does. And the melodies just work as though he wrote it all in one piece this way. And I just think it's absolutely brilliant. But, one thing to go with what Jim was saying, a hallmark of Paul's career is that he's been like the most versatile artist on the planet in terms of all the different musical styles that he writes and records in. It's not a shock to me that he would do anything that sounds country-esque. He did it with Sally G. He worked with Johnny Cash. I do wish he'd do a whole album of country music, but he's more of a dabbler. Yeah. He likes to dabble in everything. And most of his albums, you'll see all these different genres of music all on the same album that he does very well. So, to me, I kind of look at One More Kiss as being in the the finger picking, more acoustic Heart of the Country, Mama's Little Girl, those kind of songs. But now I'm thinking more because of what you guys said about it having a country feel to it. But yeah, but it doesn't surprise me that he would do something like that because he's interested in all kinds of music, and he always was, even in the Beatle days.
Jim, what do you think?
Well, I liked Little Lamb Dragonfly, and I'm also fascinated by it. My understanding is that when Paul got the rights to do a film adaptation of Rupert and the Frog Song, that this section was part of the initial music he was doing for it. You compare it with the soundtrack that we do ultimately get when the film is made about 10 years later or so. And while none of the arrangements or compositions of the newer film actually ties into this, at least the spirit and the moment and the spirit of the piece definitely catches through. So we get some sense of where he was when he was thinking of that project in this. And as a set of initial notes compared to the final work, it makes a very fascinating comparison.
Daniel.
This and One More Kiss kind of, for me, is kind of the two songs that harken the most back to McCartney. There's something, but this song is definitely more, he was thinking again about sections. And it's always fascinating when Paul starts thinking about sections of songs, and he obviously revisits that on the second side. So, yeah, it makes it a kind of a bit of a surprise as this side of the album winds down.
Fantastic. Hudson.
This not alone is my favorite song on the album. This is my favorite Wings track, period.
Wow.
And I say Wings were a band because they were, and you can't prove me wrong, because I was at an antique mall today, and they had the record selection alphabetized, and the Wings albums were in a separate section. I was so happy with that.
I got to support that store then.
Yeah. Gotta come to Vermont, Ken. I mean,
fantastic. Now, Ken, can you tell us about all your podcasts and the times and what's happening there? Tell everyone about Talk More Talk and what you got going currently.
Talk More Talk is a solo Beatles video cast that airs every other Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on our Facebook page, Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles video cast. And it's a bi-weekly show, and I've got Kid O'Toole as one of my co-hosts, Tom Hunyadi, as you know, and Joe Mayo. And once in a while, Ken Womack is a co-host on the show. The next show that we're going to do, which is next Monday, we're going to be doing something. There was an idea that I came up with for each of the solo Beatles. What would you call the best 1-2 punch as far as albums? 2 albums back to back for each of them in their solo careers, not counting live albums. So we're doing that next Monday. There's another podcast show that I do called Things We Said Today with Alan Kozin and Darren DeVivo. We just did a show we recorded Monday. It was just posted on iTunes and Podbean and YouTube. And it's a Paul McCartney special for his birthday. We each list our top 3 favorite McCartney solo songs, solo albums, top 3 McCartney Beatles songs, and we each pick one least favorite in those categories. And then I've got a Beatles show, which is a syndicated radio show. Yeah, radio still exists, folks. And it's called Every Little Thing, and it's on over 40 radio stations. On my website, which is kenmichaelsradio.com, there's a page that lists all the radio stations that carries the show and the times when it's broadcast with links to their websites so you can stream them. But Every Little Thing is an all-music show, and it includes thematic sets, very unique ones, interviews. Some stations run Beatles trivia that I throw in as a bonus element. And it goes deep into the Beatles catalog, group and solo. Everything from the very beginning to the newest releases, up to the Plastic Ono Band box set for now. So you never know what you're going to hear. There's always going to be some hits in there, some deep cuts, and that's with Every Little Thing. And then one more thing I've got. You're all going to be quizzed on this. I have a YouTube channel now called Ken Michaels Radio, and I've got almost 30 interviews on there with a lot of podcasters. In fact, Hudson's going to come on. I'm probably going to have Jim and Susan on. Everybody's welcome. I'm going to get to everybody, I promise. But I had Denny Sywell on recently and Fernando Perdomo. I know they both were on Hudson's show. Um, and I'd love for you all to subscribe to any of those YouTube channels. Ken Michaels Radio, Talk More Talk, things we said today.
Congratulations on hitting 1,000 on Talk More Talk YouTube, by the way.
Thank you.
Here,
Yeah.
here. Here,
It's
here.
great. Congratulations.
Takes a while.
Now, that obviously keeps you very busy. I want to say we got a show now coming up on the 21st. The Ruddles, first 2 CDs. That should be very, very interesting. Also want to say Plastic EP's got about 26 shows to go to make 500, the 500 show coming up. So there's always something entertaining on the internet, and that's what it's all about. And just may I say, the big event that Charles Rosenet is having, right, is called the Fab Four Music Festival on Saturday, July the 10th. I believe it's 10 Beatle bands. There's merchandise there. There's food there. This should be a big event, right? At Nolan Field, Ansonia, Connecticut. Go on the web, check it out. It's there. You'll find out all the details. And we wish them all the best there because that's a great place. If I was in the States, I'd be going, but unfortunately, I can't fly because I'm stuck here. Isn't that really great?
I'm sorry.
Hey, and one thing about that show, I'm one of the MCs.
Oh,
With
that's
Charles.
even better. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about it, Ken.
Well, Charles has been putting on this show for many years now, except last year, obviously. And it's always 10 bands in, I'd say, New York, New England area, all Beatles tribute bands, and they're all specialized. And some of them play early Beatles, some play just psychedelic Beatles. He's had Monkees bands. If that doesn't get you over there, EP, I don't know what will. There's a band there called One Sweet Dream, which is a Paul McCartney tribute band. He mixes Beatles and solo in there, and actually my stepson is in the band playing drums. But every single year he does this in Connecticut, and it draws a big crowd. It's a great outdoor thing, just Beatle music all day long, and great food and vendors and you name it. So if any of you watching this are going, make sure you say hello to me, have a chat, we'll talk Beatles, whatever you want.
Ken, are you selling anything there?
Me personally, no.
Because Michael Ventura, Michael's selling his book.
Mhm.
He'll have a stall as well.
When I'm going to write a book, you'll be the first one to know.
Michael
Even not a
Ventura,
biography.
well, I might do the forward for you. If you write a book,
Oh.
I might write the forward if you want me to.
Okay. I'd love to do a Beatles trivia book because I
That
do
would be
trivia
really
every
fun,
single. Yeah, as Hudson knows, I do trivia every single week on my website. It's in my show, every little thing. I've been doing Beatles trivia almost every single week for almost 40 years now on the
That's
radio.
unbelievable.
So I love Beatles trivia. I'd like to transcribe all the interviews I've done and put that in a book. That would be nice.
Great. Now, let's move on to the second track, Single Pigeon. Is that one of your favorites or it's not really your favorite, Ken?
It's probably my least favorite on the album. It's a nice song. It's a pleasant song. It's one that I wish Paul would have done a little bit more work on. But I know that just like so much of what he's written, his melodies stay with you. And I know at any given time, this song could be stuck in my head, just like almost everything that he's written. But I don't think it's, top tier McCartney. But yet I'm glad that it's on there, and when you hear, and so many Beatle podcasts are doing this now, when you hear the bonus material, the other stuff that was recorded at the same time, you're baffled at what Paul puts on his albums and leaves out this other material. And you could do that with so much of his stuff. And, I know Hudson feels that way, and probably Daniel with Red Rose Speedway. And the box set that came out recently really illustrates that. And I would definitely remove Single Pigeon. If it's a double album, leave it on. But there's better stuff that he did at that time. But it's a nice song. Got nothing against it.
Jim, do you like that? Have you got pigeons at home, Jim?
Not after we finally took care of that. But since this is a live channel, I can't go into the details. You never know who's listening. Speaking of changing situations, I disagree in that Single Pigeon definitely has a place here because after having done 2 songs about people building up in love, you've got a song here about a fight that goes out. I mean, turf them out is continually repeated as a chorus, and that's a British term that refers to somebody who's getting kicked out of the house because they can't stand them anymore. So having that here, in contrast to the other two songs, gives the album a certain amount of balance, and it makes sense thematically and spiritually that this song would be here, especially opposite My Love.
Great.
Okay.
Daniel.
I like the song. I was thinking about this, and I realized that this and the next song kind of really are almost the setup for Loop and the end of the medley at the end of the album. It's almost like after the first side, he starts winding down the record, the overall feel in terms of up-tempo, mid-tempo, and he kind of keeps it there through the second side, and then it starts going to a different place with Loop into the medley. So, and obviously we know this was really going to be a double album, but it's an interesting idea. It's like, okay, if it's going to be a single album, let's kind of, it's almost, I don't want to say a meditation, but there's definitely a feeling of we're going to hold this here and then we're going to take it to a different place at the end of the album. And this song definitely starts that on side two.
Great. Hudson, Mr. Podcast.
I'm gonna agree with what Ken said. If they took some of the this is one of those instances where they should have taken something off of this, or one of the B-sides, like Mama's Little Girl, to open up side two. I think it would have worked really well, which I think is a McCartney classic. Even though it is catchy, and after I played the album, which this is one of my go-to McCartney albums, I'm always humming it and whistling it.
Great. Next track, Win the Night. What do you think of that, Ken?
Brilliant. It's got a very odd time signature to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that the melody is structured around it, it's so unique. And again, great hooks in it, great harmonies. You know, I know it's been said more recently on podcast shows, but Linda McCartney deserves so much credit for the vocal harmonies that she brings along with Denny Lane on so many songs, and I love it on When the Night. Definitely. It's really different because of that time signature thing. You know, I don't know another McCartney song that is like that. But yeah, I do love it a lot.
Okay.
Great. Daniel, what do you think?
I think I'm going to echo something Ken just said. I came to realization several years ago that Linda's backup vocals are the sound of Wings. I mean, they are such a key component in the harmonies and the choruses, and you can't take her harmony vocals out of these songs. And this is another example of that. So yeah, you know, and it's worth saying again too that Paul really saw Wings as a band. So you also, you know, as much as we all understandably discuss Paul, we also have to give credit to everybody else who's involved with the record, including Linda.
Fair enough, Hudson.
This song really took a long time to grow on me. It wasn't probably even until a couple months that I cared for this song. But now I think it's really great. I love the odd time signatures. It reminds me of something that would have been on McCartney too, oddly. But
Right.
I really like it.
Next song.
Excuse me?
Yeah. Did we leave you at, Jim?
Yeah, I'm afraid you've missed one there.
All right. What are we doing? Win the Night.
Right, When the Night. I'm taking to heart what everybody said earlier about Paul wanting to experiment with other areas. So when you get a song like this, which actually borders on gospel, in terms of its setup and the way the lyrics are arranged, you can appreciate that more if you keep in mind that, yes, he was trying to stretch out as many fields as possible. And for a proto-gospel song, it's actually pretty decent.
Okay. Anyone else got any other comments on that one?
I find that really interesting what Jim said, because, you know, when you hear gospel, and my ears all these years never heard it that way. Now I'm going to try and hear it that way.
Yeah.
Because he has done that kind of thing. Let It Be, to me, is very gospel.
Very much so.
And That Day Is Done from Flowers in the Dirt has a very gospel feel to it. So,
Right now, what he does is he goes into a song called The Loop with different parts of things. He's doing something completely different there. Do you agree? Coming close to the end of the album, Ken?
well, what's different for Paul? You know, one of my favorite tracks that most people tend to dismiss from Paul in his solo career is Crean Crory from the first McCartney album. And I love it because it's so experimental and it's very improvisational. It's something that you're not used to hearing from him, but it's the kind of thing that I think he likes to do. And he probably is very self-conscious of what his audience wants from him or what he thinks they want from him, which is more of a pop rock stuff. So he limits what he does in this field, or sometimes he puts them out as bonus tracks. And I absolutely love Loop. You know, it's so unique, and it's got different tempos in it. And sometimes, you know, it kind of bothers me when fans take a look at instrumentals and dismiss them as if they're not that important because there's no words to them. But, you know, sometimes you put a lot of effort into that kind of thing. And sometimes when you just concentrate on melody and arrangement, you can come up with something very interesting, and maybe it wouldn't have worked with lyrics. But I like the very, it's called Loop First Indian on the Moon, and it does have a very spacey feel to it. Sometimes I do wonder if, because around that time Pink Floyd was doing Dark Side of the Moon, maybe that might have influenced Paul and of course he knows Alan Parsons. But I love it. You know, I love anything that Paul does that's experimental, that to the average person who doesn't really follow him religiously, it's out of character for him. And so I do find that there are certain Beatle fans out there that love when Paul does the DIY stuff, McCartney 2 and 3, because he's doing whatever the hell he wants. He's not thinking about what the public wants from him. It's just what he's feeling in the moment to please him. And I like when he does the experimental stuff like Loop, and I can mention other songs too. But yeah, I wish he'd do a whole album of Loop, but that's probably not going to happen.
Jim?
Well, it's ironic you bring up Dark Side of the Moon, Ken, because as it so happens, Dark Side gets released 1 month before Red Rose Speedway. And the albums are actually done at the same time at Abbey Road. Matter of fact, one of the features about Dark Side of the Moon was that Floyd had set up a mic in the middle of Abbey Road Studios where they had questions and then people would give their answers to them. Paul and Linda tried to do that and did not. They said they didn't care for their answers. Henry McCullough, however, did actually have one of his quotes where he goes, "I don't know, I was really drunk at the time." And it's a quote that's actually appears twice at the end of Money. In fact, at one point, it's in the transition between Money and Us and Them. Now, whether the fact that he gets on the album and Paul and Linda do not ultimately lead to other problems later in the career, just before they go to Nigeria, well, that's up for speculation. But to get back to the main point here, when you do listen to Loop, you do think this could probably have been an alternate take for something on Metal.
Interesting. Daniel?
Yeah.
I'm going to echo what you guys said. I would love to see Paul do more of this. I think it would be interesting if he would do it now, and would he be willing to do it under his name as opposed to, say, The Fireman, which obviously is a collaboration with Youth. I would love to see him do more of this, and I'd love to see him do it under his name, just I think there's also a part of Paul that still likes messing with people or messing with expectations. And this is actually one of my favorite songs on the album.
Can I say I'd really like to see an album, Paul and Ringo? Nothing to do with the Beatles. Just call it Paul and Ringo. No expectations, no nothing. Have a good time. Write 12 songs, 14. Do it the way you want. It's Paul and Ringo. It's not a reflection of the Beatles now. We're in 2021. Put out an album with the name, Paul and Ringo. Just something to do. How do you reckon the world would accept that? I reckon they'd accept it. They'd enjoy it. Could even be a bit of a country album too. What they love too. They love country.
I think there would be too much expectations by them as well as other fans, but I'd love to hear it, hell, call it something else, call it Klaatu and just confuse everybody. So.
No, but I'm saying that now. I'm saying it now because you never know what's going to happen in the future. And mind my words, the perfect title will be Paul and Ringo. Just whack your faces on it and put in big type, Paul and Ringo, and put it out there. People like it or don't like it, do it for yourselves. That's just me. Anyway, what do you think, Hudson, of that song, Loop?
This is the one song I cannot get into, and I am all for Paul doing his weird stuff. I mean, I think McCartney 2 is one of his very best albums, and I love McCartney 3. McCartney 1's still growing on me, but I don't care for it very much. Now, Ken, this is just a general question about this album. When Henry was alive, did you ever get the chance to interview him?
Yeah, I did. One time at the Fest for Beatle fans.
What year was
he
that?
was? Oh God, it was that he and Denny Seiwell made an album together. They covered Beatles songs called "Shabby Road," and yeah, he was there with Denny, I think, to promote it. So it was in the hotel room there. In fact, that interview is on my website. I think you can listen to it there.
I'll listen to it.
KenMichaelRadio.com. There's several with Denny Seiwell too. But yeah, but we go through just about everything, and the frustration of being in Paul's band, and he didn't want to do anything like Mary Had a Little Lamb, in a rock band, that kind of. Oh, I love Mary Had a Little Lamb. I will defend that, just like I defend Wonderful Christmas Time.
I love Wonderful Christmas Time, but I mean, you're with Paul McCartney. Do you really want? I mean, would you want to sing Mary Had a Little Lamb or do that?
Yeah, it's just because it's still. I think Mary Had a Little Lamb has a great melody to it. It's, I say the same thing. His melodies flow so well and so naturally, and let's just say it wasn't a nursery rhyme, but other words, but the same thing, the same arrangement, the same harmonies, everything. Mm-hmm. Would you like it then?
True.
Is it only because it's a nursery rhyme that you're against it?
No.
I like the song. Mary had a little lamb, his fleece was white as snow. So who doesn't know it? I love it. Anyway, listen, let's get on to the last track now, medley. Right, which has got Hold Me Tight, Lazy Dynamite. I mean, notice how it rhymes. It just runs off the words. What do you think, Ken?
Absolutely brilliant. Like we've said, this whole idea of medleys and putting together songs that maybe by themselves were half finished, although all these songs really sound finished to me. But I think the most amazing thing about that medley is at the very end when he combines all 4 songs and they all come on almost simultaneously. I mean, my God, that's the kind of thing that I would expect in a musical.
Yeah.
Like in an overture, how it all works together, certain songs. And Paul has the mind for that. I love all the medleys he does. I love the medley at the end of Egypt Station. The whole side 2 of Memory Almost Full, most of it is like a medley. And he's got this incredible gift for that kind of thing. And, what can you say about side 2 of Abbey Road? It's one of the greatest album sides ever. But yeah, I love it. I love when he does this stuff. And the brilliant thing is how he works all these songs together, how they're all strung together, how it all makes sense. And yet at the same time, these songs individually can work by themselves.
We've got plenty of options. But let me tell you, if you go back into history, they've asked Paul a lot of times during the 60s, if the Beatles break up or you're not doing together and you're writing songs, what do you hope to do? And he goes, I might get into musicals. Yeah. I might write musicals with John. He says that.
Yeah.
Paul has also said that there was a time when he and John went to a particular musical. It might have been Oklahoma. I'm not sure. But he and John were laughing about it like it was so corny. And yet, Paul loves that stuff. Paul can adapt to anything.
Paul owns that stuff. I mean, NPL has picked up the rights to most of Tin Pan Alley at this point. You go to see a classic musical, some money is going to Sir Paul's pocket.
Wow.
I don't know if it's all, but I know he has owned Annie. He's owned How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. He owned, I don't know if he still does, but the original Grease. not the Bee Gees songs.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
I think anything that's on the Schubert catalog, he still has a major stake in.
Okay.
Anyway, let me say something. Right, we talk about songs, but I got to tell you what, he's got Buddy Holly songs. But don't you love Mailman Bring Me No Blues? Are you familiar with the song?
Mhm.
Sure.
Okay, so a lot of people aren't. I don't know why. It's just a great Buddy Holly song when he sings it. I don't know who wrote it.
Yeah.
I think Buddy wrote it, didn't he?
He didn't. He didn't.
Oh.
did
It was actually the B-side of Words of Love as a single for Buddy
Okay.
Holly,
Mhm.
but he didn't write that song.
Which
No,
means
but
Sir
Ronnie's
Paul
hip-
doesn't own that one.
Well,
Yeah, that's
And I
true.
actually like going to YouTube and listening to Paul talk about Michael Jackson buying the Beatles catalog, and then he thought it was like a joke, and it wasn't a joke. It became a reality. I don't want to get into it, but you know, Michael Jackson did the deal of the century when he bought that, and then what? Sony bought half of it, and how much money was involved in that? It's mind blowing. But now all the songs are reverted back to Paul anyway.
they're
I
gradually.
believe.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, gradually.
But
Good luck to him. All right.
should have-
Who
you
else
should
now
have
wants to
Kid
talk about
O'Toole
the
on.
last song? Who hasn't spoken? Go, Jim.
Well, as Ken points out, these are all individual pieces that could have stood well on their own. And I'm sorry that they didn't. But you look at this in context to what was happening with the album, and that he had a 2-disc set that was immediately phoning in on itself. And instead of any of those other proposed songs, these were just all strung together, which kind of suggests that with this album, as well as a few others during this period, Paul had a lot of track management issues in terms of trying to be able to fill out an entire album and figuring out, what are we going to fill in this spot? Which makes me kind of glad that Wings wasn't trying to do this during the days when you had to worry about CDs.
Well, let me just say one thing on this, because having interviewed Denny Sywell several times, he told me that the band chose the material that ended up on the album. I don't know if they did the whole sequencing together, but when you've got 2 albums worth of material, it had to be something that they all agreed on. And this is one of the reasons why I like to say Wings was a real band. It goes far beyond, how they get paid, or whether or not there's one obvious leader, which Wings did have. But so when you hear some of the other songs, I mean, Hudson was talking about Mama's Little Girl, Tragedy, which is a cover version of Fleetwood song. Brilliant recording of it. I love it, love it, love it. With the sitar and everything. Why didn't that make Red Rose Speedway? But this was something that wasn't all Paul's decision. And I know that there are times when it certainly seems like in Paul's solo career, he's very much involved with the sequencing of his albums. There's a certain, I don't know, you start to become familiar with Paul's mind and how it works and where he plays his songs. But I think probably in the early days, he recorded a whole bunch of songs, didn't know which ones would make the album, and just placed them on here. I don't know if everything had a reason for it. I don't know if he was thinking in that way, or the band was thinking that way.
Gotcha. Anyway, a big welcome to you, Mark. How are you tonight?
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Pleased to have you aboard. We're on the last track, Loop, and I'll just ask you, Daniel, what you think of it.
It's, again, McCartney's Wings side 2 medleys. There you go. It is interesting that he does bring it. I'm sure. I wonder, he had to have taken joy in the fact that it does kind of bring all the songs back together for like a closing. Putting that together is just like, I didn't even do that on Abbey Road, so awesome. So it's again, I really think that the whole side 2 kind of builds to this medley. So
I agree. Okay, Hudson, get into it. We've got 6 minutes to wrap it up to the hour, so let's see if we can do it. What do you think, Hudson?
I love this medley. I don't think it's as good as the Memory Almost Full medley, but I think this is a very strong 4-song. My only critique is, why did he need to reuse the title "Hold Me Tight"? I don't get it. Why people need to reuse their titles? It drives me crazy when artists redo songs 600 times. I'm sorry, I can't stand Ringo's version.
So I guess you're not a Katy Perry fan.
No.
All right, that's great. Now, Mark,
yeah.
Yes.
can you tell us what you think of the whole album? You got any pictures to show us or any albums to show
Well, I
us?
actually have the big deluxo version here with all the stuff.
Can you show us, Mark, actually what's in that? I'd love to see that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, you got the box, which has an alternate photo of McCartney on the front and a nice close-up shot on the back.
I like that. Can I ask you, did you pay for that or someone sent it to you?
No, I bought it. I think I paid close to $100 for it, I think. It might have been less.
US?
Yeah.
Okay. Show me what it is because I'm thinking of buying it.
There's a nice book that has graphics that were in the original album. It's really thick. It has little pages that have like photos and sheet music and stuff that you can take out in little, slip cases and stuff. And then there's a bunch of photos in the book itself.
I like that.
It's a nice big book. The second part, and this is the reason why I got it, they have this whole folder in the Bruce McMouse show, and they have a DVD in there of the cartoon that was never released, and then it has like production drawings and all sorts of things for the Bruce McMouse show that's not available in any other edition. So it's, this is why it was worth paying the extra for this one.
Can I ask you, MPL put it out with who? Is it
What?
just MPL put it out or who they put it out through?
Yeah, that's MPL. I don't know what they put. It might have been through. Were they still with Starbucks at the time? I don't remember. I don't think
No, that would be
No,
Capital.
it's probably Capital, and that's through Universal.
Yeah.
28.
And there's this Wings Over Morocco book, which is yet another photo book, which I'll just put, more color photos in this one.
That's great.
Then, there's more. Okay, so
please.
we got the standard. That's the standard album. Then this is the thing Hudson just showed, the double album on a CD. Then, and here's another reason I got. This has the James Paul McCartney TV special.
Yeah, we're talking about that. I love that.
Then this one up here is just bonus audio, just rare and unreleased tracks. So it was the only deluxe edition of McCartney that he's put out that I thought was worth getting the biggest set. Everything else was like, I'll just get the regular disc with an extra disc, like RAM. The RAM stuff had.
He's
See
frozen.
if he's frozen or not.
Oh dear.
Extra stuff.
Looks like he's frozen. Anyway,
Just
Jim,
when you
Wow,
say
we got him.
that.
We got him back. We got him back.
Hey, Mark. Welcome back.
So anyway, this isn't my favorite album, to be honest, but the fact that they put all this extra garbage with it, especially the James Paul McCartney special, I was like, I want it. So my thought is this. I wanted to piggyback on what Ken said about why it wasn't a double album. I think it's because John's double album didn't do that well.
That's part of it.
And Wildlife didn't do that well. So they're really skittish about having another big double set coming so soon. So that's my
And yet at the same time, Yoko's Approximately Infinite Universe, a double album,
Of
came
course.
out in January of 1973.
And Fly too, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
And I love Yoko's album there.
That's a good album.
Good record.
well, I mean, it costs more to make a double album. And, Wings Over America, that's a great album. That's 3, isn't it? 3
Yeah, but
records.
that was after Apple. This is during Apple still. And also, Apple was riding on the coattails of the Beatles, not Yoko Ono. They could afford to mess around and make low print runs of Yoko. They couldn't mess around with Paul. They wanted Paul to be number 1 because they had to foot the bill for all the other artists. So,
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. This has been a fantastic show. As I said, it is Plastic EP's one of his favourite albums. And as I said, the opening song is definitely one of his favourite songs. And I just want to thank what a fantastic cast I've had on. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Hudson Rainey, Mr. Podcast. Thank you, Mark, for coming on at the end because I was really fascinated to see the box. And as I said, next show should be the Ruddles, the first CDs. Make sure you're watching, and we'll see you all here on Plastic EP's album show. Thanks for watching, everyone. Say goodbye, everyone. See
Thanks
you.
for having
everyone.
me on.